Travis Winkett. So, Pet Shop Boys is our opening hymn. It's a sin. And then, of course, we've got to keep it going throughout the whole month. Earth, Wind, and Fire for our closing hymn, September. It's the Mormon theme song of Joseph Smith's Mormonism. I'm real excited. The accuracy that the Book of Mormon had for 2017, I can't wait to find out what's going on for this. So, we'll have to wait. So, yeah, tomorrow is 9/11, and I've typically done a remembrance video. YouTube banned my first one, saying that how dare I show images that are all over the internet about 9/11. It's just wrong. But the one thing about 9/11 is that everybody in the media and the government have gotten their story straight now. The problem is that we can't trust it. We have blamed Osama bin Laden, finally, as he's now dead. The original planner of 9/11 is still locked up in Guantanamo without his rights to a justice system. So that we as a nation can witness how our justice system works in all cases to show that if he's truly guilty, he'll be punished. Nope, instead we... I hope I remember to edit out the end of that video segment. Where was I? Yeah. My cousin Darren was one of the billion prosecutors of Saddam Hussein, who was originally accused for 9/11, who was found guilty of going after the Kurds, who had been supplied with weapons by our own CIA, and were mounting a coup against Saddam Hussein. And so, yeah, Saddam Hussein, realizing the Kurds broke their contract agreement with him and were seeking to overthrow him, installed the punishments for violating the contract. They don't tell us that in America. Elsewhere in the world, it's told. Interesting how our government covers things up around the world. My mom, still to this day, believes Saddam Hussein was guilty for 9/11. She will not accept Osama bin Laden or Pakistan. You know, we went into Pakistan first, then Afghanistan. That's how we got into the war in Afghanistan, is because we were just throwing out accusations against people that Bush was feeling as a threat to his oil industry. And so, a cover-up of 9/11. That's what we know as a fact. Our government covered up 9/11. You know, you can debate all you want as to who was responsible and how it actually fell and the science behind it. Which, if you remember, there was a Mormon BYU physics professor who came out and said, this ain't right. This is violating the laws of physics, the way our government's having the reported fall. And there was even a guy who did a computer program. See? It fell. You gotta program in the right physics formula to get the accurate result. Otherwise, you're deceiving people. So yeah, this BYU physicist came out and said, hey, no, something's going on here. Something's being covered up. The only way to have it fall that quickly as a free fall is for an explosion, like a demolition. And the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, for whom he works for, BYU, worked for, I'm not sure if he still works there. Been how many decades now? I told him, how dare you use the school computers to instruct people about physics beyond your curriculum. Now, heaven forbid a physics teacher should use his computer at BYU to instruct and give actual real case examples on how the laws of physics work. But yeah, the one thing we know for certain is that our government covered it up, and the church silenced a Mormon who was a physics professor. And with coronavirus, everybody's arguing what to do, who's to blame, where it originated. The one fact we know for certain, China covered it up. They're still covering it up. They don't want anybody to know the origins. They let people see what they want them to see after some begrudging resentment. But even at the beginning, they weren't going to tell anybody. It was that optometrist who ruined everything. They were keeping it a secret, as it had already spread throughout the world. And so it doesn't matter whether it was a bat from a market or whether it was from a bat at the lab that was specifically designed to be this deadly virus. Doesn't matter. The one thing we know for certain, China covered it up. And Russell M. Nelson, medical doctor, helped to cover it up. He called them. We got the Shanghai Temple. So again, the church is involved in something else that deals with 9/11. Because coronavirus is now 2 9/11s. We've lost a lot more people than we lost in 9/11. And so, as is traditional for the Mormon faith, they want to have covered up another 9/11. The Mountain Meadows Massacre. We have a descendant of the bishop who was in charge of that, having been ordered by Brigham Young to do so. But again, the one thing we know for certain, it was covered up. And so, whether or not Brigham Young knew and gave the orders, or specifically wrote a letter post-dating it for the 13th instead of the 11th, telling them, don't do it, Brother Lee, don't do it. Doesn't matter. We know for a fact the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints covered it up. And that was a bloody, gruesome thing those Mormons did. And there's another 9/11 that I'm the only one that's been telling you about. That yes, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints was involved with and tried to cover it up. There was also a 9/11 in Chile with Poppy Bush. He's not called Poppy because he's father. It's because of the opioid plant, the poppy He was involved in the CIA, and yes, there is photographic evidence from him at the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Again, another situation where it doesn't matter what happened, our government covered it up. But the same with the coup in Chile. Bobby Bush was involved, and it was covered up. So whether there were Mormons enlisted with the CIA involved in that operation wouldn't surprise me a bit. But again, the one thing we know for sure, it was covered up. And so, yes, the one thing that I'm the exclusive information on, because I did the research, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has covered it up. They will not talk about it with church history. They don't even like having Joseph Smith Sr. identified as a Master Mason in Canandaigua, New York. They had the Mormons muck up the footnoting references to be uncertain or citation needed, or in other cases you'll see an author, a modern author, as the source for the reference from 200 years ago. So yes, Wikipedia, we know for a fact, is being covered up of the real church history. And so yes, you have to be knowledgeable enough as an inspector or a forensic investigator to a crime when you're researching church history. You've got to be able to identify the different pieces of the puzzle and how they fit together. And so I've told you, Canandaigua, New York, in 1826, is the keystone of church history. Because of a guy by the name of William Morgan. He came to Western New York, had made an arrangement with the Batavian Press so that he could work on the publication of 2 different books. And so back in those days, the author would often require a scribe to write on parchment what they dictate to them. And I'll tell you, because I've already told you, Oliver Cowdery was hired for that job. As instead of his home in Batavia, William Morgan came to Canandaigua, to the lodge where Joseph Smith Sr. was the Master Mason of that lodge. And the book that the Batavian Press published, which obviously wasn't by him because he never got to finish the book, and so no, it wasn't him, and it's not a scandalous thing anyway. It was no big deal. Everybody knew that stuff. All you had to do was attend the meetings. You don't even have to be a member to know exactly the contents of the book that was published under William Morgan's name. It wasn't the book. There was a search made, tearing up his home to try to find the manuscript pages that he had completed. Couldn't find them. And so, yes, we now know by reading that book the duties and responsibilities of a Master Mason. So we now know the role that Joseph Smith Sr. played in helping William Morgan flee the country on 9/11, 1826. And so, who were these bad guys that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints are covering up for. Because, Joseph Smith's the good guy. Church should be willing to tell us. But the one fact we know for sure, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is covering it up. They will not bring it up in church history. You have to do a diligent search to figure it out. And so what the church is instead distracting critics and ex-Mormons with is the debate over whether Sidney Rigdon is the major author of the Book of Mormon, leaving out Joseph Smith Sr. for the 116 pages. And they're doing a great job. They've fooled the ex-Mormons, haven't they? You're not listening to my videos. You're upset with me because John DeLynn is grooming you guys in blatant plain sight, and you're mad at me because he's succeeded in grooming you. Because a woman who's been groomed sexually gets furious with anybody who tries to tell her that she's being groomed and abused as a victim of sexual abuse. And it's not just for sexual abuse that grooming is involved with. And cults use it. Don't drink the Kool-Aid, for example. He groomed his followers, so they were giving out the Kool-Aid themselves. And then there's David Koresh, the Heaven's Gate guy, Scientology, as we were hearing horror stories from that. Katie Holmes had to flee because of Tom Cruise and his involvement with it. So yeah, there's a lot of crime going on that people, of course, want to have covered up. They don't want to be exposed as criminals. They might have to go to court and be judged for their crimes. So yes, the natural tendency of criminals is to cover things up rather than make it known on the rooftops, as the prophecy goes. And so it's necessary to have a press that's not compromised by these cover-up groups, whether they be the government or a major religion of a whole state of the United States that controls the government of that state as well, so that things don't get covered up, that businesses and other criminals can be exposed, not just government leaders. We took down Nixon through the press. Deep Throat. Codename Deep Throat. Classy. And so, yes, then you get, what's her name? I can't think of her name. She does, she's the little teen girl that goes to see Nixon to take care of his dogs. I think it's called Half-Baked or Baked, or I can't remember. That's a different movie, I think. That's some other guy. Anyway. Is it Dick? Yeah, it's called Dick for Richard Nixon. She's the Spider Girl that kisses Spider-Man upside down, or the girlfriend. Kirsten Dunst. There it is. And so, it's Heber C. Kimball, who, his Wikipedia page, which again, covered up on Wikipedia, it's not the actual quotes from his journal. He says things differently in his own journal. So that video to point out those differences back in the day. But it's very clear that he's covering things up, or they're covering things up for him. But what we do realize in the cover-up is that he knew. He knew all about William Morgan. He knew about Joseph Smith Sr. And he covered it up. But he covered it up with code that we would know that he was talking about them. Because he assumed, as he states, that the documents were all destroyed in 1826, after William Morgan fled the country, being secreted out of the country to save his life, under the orders of Joseph Smith Sr. And because the documents didn't get destroyed, we can now expose Heber C. Kimball. And so, with the age of the internet, we're able to see that Heber C. Kimball was already a practicing polygamist before joining the church. Before even the church got started. And so we know for a fact that he joined the church and kept his adultery, which was a crime still back then. You can't have an extra wife. You can only have one. It's a crime to have more than one. He kept it a secret from Joseph Smith. And so Brigham Young, we can go through his list of wives. Wait a minute, there's some being sealed to him during Joseph Smith's time frame. Joseph Smith's not getting sealed to women during his lifetime. They were sealed afterward by Brigham Young's clerk. You understand what a cover-up is? And so, yes, the Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball were in charge of the fact, which is called the Danites, of whom came John D. Lee of the Mountain Meadows Massacre, of whom Senator Lee from Utah is the second or third great grandson. We have a living descendant of that mass murderer of women and children, and he's among us. So are you paying attention to what he's trying to do in Congress? Because it's not good. He's following in the footsteps of his ancestor. But these Danites were the converts of Brigham and Heber C. Kimball. What a surprise. They were Scottish Rites Masons, not York Rites Masons that Senior was. And as Scottish Rites Masons, it is well documented from multiple sources that they had been infiltrated by the Illuminati, which our current press and government leaders all claim they're a hoax. They no longer exist. Nope. No evidence of them continuing to exist to this day. Right? You even know what their sign is? The Illuminati, the illuminated ones, the light bearers. How art thou fallen from heaven, O light bearer, son of the morning? So yeah, even John C. Bennett, who joined the church late, was involved with this secret group committing crimes behind Joseph's back, not just of adultery, but murder and plundering and burning the homes of the neighbors, as Joseph Smith was getting blamed for it, as he's the leader of the church, and constantly being acquitted. So he keeps coming back when Brigham Young's wanting to take control of the church. Joseph Smith keeps coming out and back from jail, messing everything up for him. And so John C. Bennett was a part of that group, even though Joseph Smith had made him one of his counselors, all right behind his back. But Joseph Smith had caught him in the act. He confessed to adultery, and so Joseph Smith excommunicated him. John C. Bennett was upset. Went to the Danites. Said, "Hey guys, I want retaliation." And they wouldn't take him. "No, you're going to expose us. Get out of here." So what does John C. Bennett do? He organizes his own Illuminati organization. It's right there in his Wikipedia page. They don't cover that up because it's not Joseph Smith. So yeah, the cover-ups. So that's the one thing to remember, is that the one thing we know for sure is that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is covering things up. Again, do I have to explain section 121 for you? When you cover up your sins, ... Amen. They never even had it in the first place. They lost it from the start.